What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Living in the Red, the podcast for people who live in red states but don't necessarily align with the red state agenda. I'm Cory Bradford, history content creator with my co-host,
Cody D, journalist and unapologetic truth teller.
Did I allow you to say it the way you wanted to say it that time, Cody? Because you kept telling me that I was like introducing you and not letting you get to introduce yourself.
That was actually perfect. So thank you.
Awesome. We're getting it together. We're getting it together. Fifth episode, I believe. So we're finally starting to get a little bit of a routine now.
Yes.
Awesome. So let's start by talking about what's going on with the SNAP benefits, because I keep getting conflicting information. 1 minute they're telling us that President Trump has completely suspended SNAP benefits for the month of November because of the government shutdown. Then two judges, one in Massachusetts and one in Rhode Island, both said no. There's an emergency fund set aside for this. There's no reason for that to lapse during the government shutdown. They basically said that you have to fund it. They basically told Trump, you have to fund it. The federal government has to fund this. And then he was like, okay, fine, I'll fund it partially. He was like, I'll do partial funding, which, okay, that's not going to help some people. But and does that mean they get partial benefits, or does like half of the people get the benefits? Like, I'm still not clear on that. And then he goes on some rant Tuesday morning saying, no, I'm not going to fund nothing until the government shutdown is over with, until the Democrats stop the shutdown, blah, 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 blah. And then literally hours later, his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, goes on record and says, oh, no, he just meant that we can't use the emergency funding for more than 1 month. So he's still going to fund it, but it's going to be partial, and we don't know when the funds are going to kick in. So I don't know what's going on. Like, I can't figure it out. We know that people who usually get those benefits on the first have not received them. So we know at the very least it's been delayed at the very least. But I don't know what's going on. I mean, it seems like he's just really playing games with this issue as leverage for the government shutdown.
Yeah, I mean, you did a better job summarizing it than I would have, because I mean, I knew most of those details, but at the same time, I think you narrowed it down day by day better than I would have. I don't know. I'm curious as to the people who have voted for Trump and rely on food stamp benefits. I wonder how they're feeling right now, because I'm wondering if they've been misinformed as to, this is the Democrats' fault, why the government is shut down, as to why we can't get benefits, or are they truly seeing and understanding the back and forth that Trump is having in terms of, deciding whether or not he's going to use that emergency fund to help people get food. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about this last week, how there is this ongoing misconception around the people who are using it, but my heart just breaks for the children who are going without food, those working parents who need that subsidy to help put food on the table for their families, the elderly, the disabled. Like, I'm thinking about all those people. But, here in Alabama, Governor Kate Ivey said that she was not going to essentially be the federal government and supply Alabamians with money for SNAP benefits. But she made it seem as if the state does not have the money to make up for the gap in where the federal government is not getting that money right now. And she has since announced that she is giving $2 million to, I believe it's 8 different food banks across the state that help cover all 67 counties in the state of Alabama. And so that, along with DHR, they're also giving an additional $3 million to different food banks as well, to make sure that people are getting fed. So, there is some aid out there. I think last week I may have mentioned that Birmingham Mayor Randall Woodfin has been putting some things together to make sure that the people of Birmingham are getting fed as well. I know that you said that you were working at a food bank in your town. So, I'm appreciating and seeing like all the efforts of people who are trying to fill in the gaps. But, I think that ultimately a lot of people were just like, okay, when is the government going to reopen? I think we are officially now in the longest government shutdown in U.S. history at this point. And people are like, okay, what's going to give?
At this point, look, I was all for what the Democrats was doing. I've been pretty clear and upfront about the fact that as a gig economy employee myself, I have used Obamacare. So this is something that I personally rely on. But at a certain point, you got to realize, okay, the Republicans are not going to back down. They're not going to negotiate because they have no reason to negotiate. They can make all of this look like it's the Democrats' fault. And the longer it goes, the more it looks bad on the Democrats because they're the ones that are not like, they're trying to, the Republicans are putting these what they call continuing resolutions out there to keep the government funded during these negotiations. And that would basically reopen the government. But the Democrats are even saying no to that because they feel like the government closing gives them more leverage to really get the subsidies replenished and everything that they really want back into the budget. They feel like the only way they can get that is during an actual government shutdown. And Republicans have been pretty clear about no, we're not going to negotiate with you. So
So you feel like the Democrats should bend at this point?
I think that they need to really come together to see, okay, well, what if the Republicans are just not going to give us anything? How long are we going to go? Is this going to be a 3-month shutdown? Are we going to have a 6-month shutdown? I mean, this is already, like you said, the longest government shutdown in history. It was well over a month. How long do they go before it becomes like, okay, this is just, we're not going to get anything out of this. So why are we still doing it? What are we
You're
still
trying
doing?
to figure out the strategy.
Yes, I mean, with everything when it comes to Democrats, I'm trying to figure out what the strategy is and if they even have one.
But I remember when you and I were initially talking about the shutdown, like I think the day it happened, we were in the studio and
Mhm.
you were like, yeah, Democrats are eventually going to give in because they don't ever have backbone. And now they have been, stomping their foot down. And I've heard you say that you essentially feel like Democrats should do what's needed to go ahead and open the government. I've heard other people say the same thing. And I'm just like, okay, but y'all are the same people who are saying that Democrats need to have a backbone. So like which one is it? They're finally acting like they have a backbone. We just saw the election results of what happened yesterday. We saw that there's a little bit of a blue wave that's going on across the country. Democrats have a little bit of steam right now.
Sure.
And although the Republicans are in complete control of the government right now, I think the bigger question is what is feasible? Like if you had to come up with a strategy, what would that look like considering the situation that the Democrats are currently in with the Republicans being in total control?
I mean, that's a valid point. You called me out on a little bit of a contradiction in my approach here.
It's
Yeah, because
not
I
just
was.
you. It's not just you. It's other people who are out here saying the same thing. And I'm just
You're
like,
right.
but wait a minute. We have all been so critical of the party. They're sitting
Mhm.
here doing something. Okay. And now we want to criticize them for it.
Yeah,
And
but
I'm not saying that they're wrong or right.
yeah.
I want people to get fed. I want government workers to get their paychecks. I'm just trying to figure out what the solution is here.
No, I agree. I agree. You're right. The Democrats had to do something to fight for what they believed in, and they believed this was the right, thing to do. And you're right. If they had backed down after a couple of days or a week, we'd all be sitting here saying, "Look at these Democrats, weak, spineless." We'd all be saying that. The fact that it has gone on this long, obviously you could look at it and say, "Hey, they're actually standing up this time. They're not backing down." And that's one viewpoint of it. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it would be like, okay, great, but how long do you do this before you realize Republicans are just not going to give you anything because they don't have an incentive to do so at a certain point. So
Hmm.
I think that's where I'm at. I'm not even on like some they should immediately back down. I'm more at the place where it's like, what is the overall strategy? How long do you go? And if you do actually end up just passing one of these CRs and opening up the government again, what did you get from it? Because that's I think where the Democrats are now. They've kind of got themselves between a rock and a hard place because it's like if the government were to reopen tomorrow and say we were still dealing with the same big beautiful bullshit bill that we already had and there was no changes to it, then it's like, okay, you let the longest government shutdown in history for what?
Or what? Hmm.
And so that's where I think you're at with it, and I think that's where a lot of these Democrats are at. It's like, well, we got to keep going because we got to get something from this. We can't just come away from this empty-handed, and that's where it becomes a really big kind of standoff as to, well, this thing could really go into like 2 months, maybe even longer, just because they have to get something from it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm competitive. So for me, I'm just like, hold the fort, like hold on, do not let in, right? But at the same
Yeah,
time, so many people are hurting.
yeah,
And I'm just sitting here wondering, like, our look, we all know, we all have said that the Republican Party is very, very evil.
yeah.
And I'm just like, are they so evil to the point that they would let this go on for months and months with no consideration to the things that Democrats are trying to negotiate on? I mean, I'm sure they can easily flip that around and say that
Yeah,
it's Democrats who are doing that. But
sure.
the things that Democrats are fighting for are not just like, it's not bullshit. It's like
Yeah,
things that are going to help the American people. And so it's like, okay, there's nothing that you guys are going to negotiate on. One of the things that Democrats are trying to negotiate on is around, the healthcare premiums being increased, right?
Yeah.
And so there was an interview that, and I saw the clips. I didn't watch the whole thing. And I forgot who it was with. So forgive me. But I saw that Donald Trump was sitting down and had an interview with, I think, someone at Fox News recently. And no, it wasn't Fox News. I'm
Was the
sorry.
60 minutes? Was the 60 minutes
It was
interview?
60 minutes. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes, it
Mhm.
was 60 minutes. But she asked, like, okay, you've been talking about getting rid of Obamacare since your first term. You have talked about how terrible the healthcare, how terrible the government healthcare is, and how you think that it needs to be more affordable. But what is your plan? Like, where is that? Where's the proposal to replace the Affordable Health Care Act?
Yeah.
And he ain't got none. Okay.
Nothing.
And so it's like, okay, but you could ask these same questions, like we're sitting here talking about how, if Democrats continue to hold out on this shutdown, what would be the point? I could ask the same questions to Republicans.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing too? You guys are saying that all these things are terrible. Okay, then what are you guys going to replace all these so-called terrible things with to help make America better, to make America great again, like you guys claim that it needs to be? Where are the solutions? And it's not outlined in the big beautiful bill, which
No.
a lot of that is going to be put into action in 2026. And so, I just I don't understand.
Yeah, I think it's almost like, to me, it feels like the Republicans have convinced their constituents that having high healthcare costs is just the price of freedom, because at least the government doesn't control it and the Democrats don't control it, and it's not quote unquote socialized medicine. And it's just ridiculous to me. Like, the idea that you should have to pay more for something that is so essential, like just basic healthcare. We're not even talking about like extensive
But
stuff, but just
But what's
basic healthcare.
interesting to me, if I remember correctly, I'm speaking from a place of privilege where I've never had to be on Obamacare, and Obamacare also allowed, people of our generation to stay on our parents' insurance for a longer
Yep.
amount of time, which
Yep.
I took full advantage of.
Same here.
Um, so if I remember correctly, when President Obama was pitching the idea of the Affordable Health Care Act, Republicans were using those same talking points then. If I
Yep.
remember correctly, they were
100%.
saying, "Oh, healthcare is going to be so expensive; it's not going to be affordable. The wait to see doctors is going to be super long. There's going to be lines out the door. This is socialism." Okay, but your plan to make it even more expensive is now the cost of freedom. The
Yeah.
same
Logic.
healthcare that y'all said 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago, was not anything that Americans should attain at all. So, so it's like, which one is it? Is Obamacare bad or is it not?
Yeah, it's they. I mean, look, they don't have, like you just said before, Trump, MAGA, Republicans. They don't have anything to replace the system with. If they had something, they would have had. I mean, Trump was in office for 4 years before this. If they had something that they knew they could get the majority of Congress to agree on, Republican and Democrat, they would have pushed it by now and they would have replaced it. But they don't have anything to replace it with. Period. Everything that they would do would just make it more expensive, and that's exactly what we're going to see here. The fact that they're trying to end these subsidies is just going to make the premiums go up, and it's going to make everything more expensive in the healthcare field as far as people getting healthcare. And so,
Now,
I
did
mean,
I read
they got nothing.
correctly that premiums have already increased?
Yeah, I got a letter in the mail a couple of months ago telling me about an increase, and apparently it's just the beginning. Like, it's apparently over the next year, or over the next, I think it's over the next 3 years. Every year the increases are supposed to go up and up and up. Now I need to fact check my sources on that, so take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, apparently they're already preparing for those increases to take place, because I mean the bill was passed, right? The big beautiful bill was passed, right?
Right,
And so what
right.
they're trying to do now is just like little tweaks to it, and that's what the Democrats are trying to get those subsidies put back in. But yeah, I mean the healthcare companies are pretty much preparing for these increases that we the people would have to pay. And again, even if you don't have Obamacare, even if you have like a regular healthcare through your employer, or you buy private insurance, it's still going to be more expensive because
You
there
know,
are other things from Obamacare that are expiring basically here soon.
right. Well, today I was out having to run my millions of errands and my appointments and all the things I had to do today. And I stopped by there's a new eye doctor that I'm looking to try to go see.
Mhm.
And so I stopped by their office and said, "Hey, I wanted to get a couple things out of the store, and then I also wanted to make an appointment." This is the first year that I've been on my husband's health insurance.
Okay.
And so I did not have my vision insurance information directly on me. All I had was like my medical insurance information.
Mhm.
And so I said, "Well, this is what I have. Are you able to look it up in the system to see?" And they were like, "Well, we can try, but it's no guarantee. You may have to call, blase, blase." And one of the comments that the receptionist made was, "Yeah, they make it difficult for us to try to find you in the system because they do not want you to use your insurance. Because if you do not use your insurance, that's a bonus for somebody at the insurance company." And I
Huh.
was like, "Oh, yeah, capitalism." I was like, we just all live
Damn.
in one big ass scam in this country, right? Like it
It's
was
a
just a
big
reminder.
scam.
It's just so it was a reminder to like the be because it's like it's true. First of all, why are there all these stipulations around this person is a carrier of this, or this doctor's office doesn't take this, or if you go here you get this capped here, or you'll get an additional 50. Like I ended up getting on the phone with my vision insurance company, and they listed out, they said, "Okay, you get glasses, this is what you can get for this much, and then if you go to these stores you'll get an additional 20% off, but again you don't get it when you go here, and then when you get contacts, this is what you get." I was just like, "Man, what the hell kind of math y'all doing in y'all office to decide, okay, this is the best way for us to scam all the American people so that we could get the biggest profits on our end?" Like it should not be like that. Like we should not be living in a society where everything is so challenging to access while we're actively paying for it.
Yeah, we have this ridiculous double dip system where we, the people, pay money into insurance, and then the companies, they pay money into insurance, and then the government, they pay money into insurance, and then when you go to file a claim, they're like, oh, either A, you still owe this a huge deductible, or you still owe all this money even though you've been paying into the system, or B,
Right.
sorry, we can't approve this claim because of this, and this, and we're not even going to be able to cover this at all, even though you've been paying into this system every year for 5, 6, 7 years, every month. Like, it's just a ridiculous system, and there's no
Yes.
other developed country that makes it
No.
this difficult to get basic healthcare. When you look at how
No.
Canada does it, the United Kingdom, all these other countries, it's just like this. I mean, we talked about on, I think it was the first or second episode, how like it cost me over $3,000 just to have my first kid. Even, and my wife had insurance. And it was like, well, what was the purpose of the insurance?
What
Was
was
it going
the
to be
point?
10,000 without it? Like what?
Right.
It doesn't make
Exactly.
any sense.
Can
But
I veer off to the left a little bit more here with something else that I came across?
mhm,
We're talking about healthcare, and NPR did a story about how Finland, like, some of the countries in the EU, have
mhm,
some of the best healthcare in the world, right? And
mhm,
so Finland is one of those countries. And so they interviewed, or, well, the story was about the declining birth rate. And so the question was, why does this country that has the best healthcare in the world and has parental leave that's like a part of their governmental standards, like why are people not having babies? And I was just waiting and waiting for the answer, because they of course don't give it to you until the end. And
yeah,
the answer basically was, some of the same issues we have here is community. People are not um finding other people or communing like they have in the past, careers, figuring their lives out and deciding,
yeah,
okay, I'm going to be in my 30s before I have a kid, right? And these are some of the same, like, cultural conversations that I feel like our generation and Gen Z is having as well, in terms of, the timeline as to when they're going to have families.
sure.
But I was like, what luxury is it to live in a country where that is the only problem? Like, we got that here too. Like, we have
Yeah.
a lack of community issue in this country as well. But it's also affordability. It's also like, hey, I don't want to give birth and have to go back to work 6 weeks later, and my vagina is still leaking from giving birth, or my cesarean, my C-section cut has not completely healed, or it's ripped back open and I have to go get an antibiotic. Like, who wants to deal with all that after having given birth? You know what I'm saying? And so, anyway, I was just like, even though they have their problems, it still doesn't pale in comparison to the things that we're still dealing with here. And it's crazy because we're all supposed to be first world countries, right?
Yeah, right? Yeah. We're supposed to be the greatest, best country on earth, and yet we have all those problems that Finland has, plus 1,000 more on top of that. It's so expensive. And like you said, yeah, community is a big thing, right? It takes a village to raise a child. And I know that's a statement that people make a lot, kind of just throw it around, but that's literally how humans evolve. Like it's not supposed to just be on the mom or even just on the dad. You're supposed to have the grandparents. You're supposed to have the uncles and aunts. You're supposed to have the older children to help with the younger children. All of that's supposed to be a part of the equation. And a place like Finland, yeah, I could see that they probably are having that family structure kind of break down because of careers and just it's harder to meet people these days, right? They're dealing with some of the same things we have over here, where we don't have third spaces as much. People don't communicate in real life as much. A lot of it's going on online and social media, and that can be very fabricated. And so, yeah, I mean, it's becoming tough, I think, everywhere for people to just meet the right person that they even want to have kids with. But over here, I think Hennessy takes care of a lot of those problems, and I think once you put that into the equation, it's people that's going to be having kids no matter what. That was a bad joke, but um, but what
You
I will
saying
say is,
people drink through their problems and just end up having
yes,
babies anyway? I
in
mean, that's
America, yes,
true.
in
That's
America,
true.
yes, yes, they figure out a way. They figure out a way, and then they don't know how to
I
take
mean,
care of them after the fact because, yeah, that's how it is here in the United States.
100%. I definitely think that a part of what is deemed as part of the American dream or American culture is, hey, you are supposed to get married and have babies,
Mhm.
regardless of if you are a full functioning adult,
Yeah.
regardless of if you have your ducks in a row. Like, can you actually provide for this child? Are you mentally stable enough for this child? Do you have a decent home for this child? Like, none of those questions really matter. It's, hey, you're supposed to have kids because you're 32 now.
Yeah, yeah. I hate that when people put a timetable on. I mean, my grandmother had my dad when she was almost 40. I think she was actually 40, and this is in the 60s.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's like that was pretty unusual. But hey, it worked. It worked for her. It worked for them. Now she had kids before that, but still, that worked for them. So when you put a timetable on, I mean, obviously, yes, the older you get, the more difficult it becomes. But yeah, America, we pressure women and we pressure people to have kids, and I mean, I'm sure you hear this all the time from some of your relatives, like, hey, so when are you going to do this? So when are you going to do that? And it's like, just chill. Like
They
everything
not even
happens on its own
asking.
timetable.
They not even asking. If I say, "Oh my gosh, I got a headache." You pregnant? Wait a
Oh,
minute.
that's
I said I got a headache. Now how'd that turn into, am I pregnant?
yeah.
Oh,
Every every
I'm a
time,
little hungry right now. Are you pregnant? Oh, wait a minute. It's just like, yeah, I can't do anything without people thinking that I'm already pregnant.
yeah. And have you hit the 1 year mark in your marriage?
Yes, I mean, so we quietly got married last year.
Okay. Yes.
And then we had our wedding this year. So we're going on, it'll be 6
Okay.
months wedding this month. We're going on 18 months total married.
Okay, okay, cool, cool. Yeah, because in that first year, first 2 years, you're gonna get it every few weeks, every few months. They're gonna be like, so you expecting, so you pregnant. I mean, we got it a
All
lot
the
our first year.
time.
But let's talk a little bit about last night's elections because you mentioned it a little
Okay.
bit earlier in the show. It was, you said blue wave. I mean, that might be an understatement. I mean, it was a blue tsunami. I mean, Democrats won pretty much everywhere, including in places they weren't supposed to win. There was an election in Georgia where two Democrats won. I think it was like a public safety commission, something like that, where they won seats that they were not supposed to win. Obviously, we saw in New York City one of the biggest political upsets of all time. A Democrat socialist is now going to be the mayor of the biggest city
When
in
you
the
say
United
political
States.
upset, what do you mean by that? Because because the establishment doesn't necessarily support a democratic socialist.
That plus, if you go back to the beginning of the year or the beginning of that election cycle for New York City,
Oh, he was the
Manami,
underdog.
oh, he was polling 1%.
Yeah.
1 and 2%. And I don't think we've ever seen that big of a jump to go from that to actually winning the whole thing. I mean,
Okay.
maybe there's some examples of it in some small cities here and there, but that is in general a huge, huge upset because no one expected him in the beginning to have any shot. He ran a
Okay.
really strong campaign, which we talked about at length last week. And
Yes.
yeah, he upset the establishment pretty big time. And I don't know if you've been looking at the social media and the internet, but when I tell you Republicans and conservatives are losing their mind over
I
that,
know. I
I mean,
know.
losing their minds. They're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, communism is coming to New York. And it's like, bro, is it communist? That's a different thing. You need to learn the
Right.
difference.
Like,
But
do y'all know words and definitions? Okay.
they don't. They don't. But that's an interesting conversation because yeah, you have Mondami who considers himself a democratic socialist, which is different from even being a full blown socialist. By the way, that is a different thing.
Right.
He's more of the Bernie Sanders AOC type, and
Hmm.
he wins in New York City. But then you look in Virginia, for instance, where Spamberger ran a very moderate campaign and won
Yes.
the governor's race of Virginia. New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, who did a lot of media, she went on the Breakfast Club, went to a lot of diverse places to pitch her campaign. And she ran as a moderate as well. And she won pretty big there in New Jersey. So this is a kind of a mixed result for the Democrats. I mean, obviously it's great that they won across the board, but it's like in some places you won being very centrist, being very moderate. And then in New York City, you won being very, very far left. And so it's kind of like, I think the Democratic Party is trying to search for, okay, what should this teach us? How should we move forward? But now you've got like mixed results. It's like on the one hand, centrism still works in middle America and statewide elections. But on the other hand, wow, I mean, Mondami, his platform, his example might be the example for politicians going forward in the Democratic Party. So it's kind of like which one, which direction is the Democratic Party really going to take here?
Right. Like the party has gotten too broad. And I think we've talked about that before, maybe on TikTok Live, where we talked about how the party is having a hard time figuring out its identity
Yes.
because of how broad it is and how broad they have tried to be inclusive of all people, which is fine, right? It's a good problem to have to a degree, but then you have a hard time categorizing it, right? And then we've also talked before, or at least I've said that I think that in the future, one of the parties is going to be obsolete. I don't know which one that is, but I think there's going to be a third party that's created possibly for the middle people who are just like, okay, I'm absolutely not on that MAGA shit, but I also am not like far left either. There, Democrats are able to gain ground because there is such a huge middle ground. There is such, you have the I know Dick Cheney just died, but I ain't trying to talk about him. What's his daughter name? Elizabeth Cheney? Liz Cheney, yeah.
Liz Cheney. Yeah.
Yeah, you have the Liz Cheneys of the world, and then you have, the Joe Bidens of the world. People who are just like, I consider kind of like old school politicians who now fall in the middle. I still think that the party has a lot of figuring out to do. Um, One thing that I thought was interesting based off of the results that came in was that in Virginia specifically, it looked like all of the counties, not all of the counties turned blue, but they became bluer.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
was like, now where were y'all last year?
Yeah, I saw a figure that said, and I need to fact check this, but I saw a figure, I believe it was on MSNBC, that said that 6% of Trump voters in Virginia that voted in this governor's race voted for the Democrat candidate.
I
And that
need
is
to understand.
and I'm going to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate, and that's a huge shift. And I know where you're probably going because I've seen a couple of people saying this on CNN and different places where it's like Spamberger is a woman. She has become the
Right.
first female governor of Virginia. So the argument of sexism is what ruined Kamala Harris. Well, in this particular scenario, they voted for the woman. So I've heard a couple people say this, and this is what I want to get your opinion on because we've talked extensively about Kamala Harris on the show. You saw her speak in Birmingham. Was it so much so that maybe it wasn't that she didn't get the votes because she was a woman, but maybe she wasn't the right woman? Because that's a talking point that I've heard a lot on political news today. And I
Kamala?
just, yeah,
Are you
that
referring to
Kamala,
Kamala?
yes, that she wasn't the right woman for the moment for the job at that particular time.
I just think that we are always going to be theorizing around why Kamala Harris didn't get elected because
Yeah,
there were so many variables at play in terms of what
sure.
was against her. I mean, we cannot, and I've said this before, we cannot discount the fact that she is a Black woman.
That's true.
We cannot discount the fact that there was no primary. I'm still reading Original Sin very slowly. I've gotten past 100 pages.
You in there, then?
um,
You in there?
yeah, I've been there. I got 200 more to go. But it's the stuff that I'm reading in that book, man. I'm just like, I cannot believe these folks. I just cannot believe the lengths that they went through to try to cover up the fact that this man was losing it and was like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's gonna run again. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. Joe Biden really screwed us up when it
Yeah.
came to
Yeah.
preparing for the next person to run in against Trump. You know, whether or not Kamala Harris was the best candidate against Trump, just generally speaking, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know because I don't know how can I gauge um how people felt about her without there ever having been a primary. We only know
Yeah.
what people felt
Yeah.
about the entire administration, and it
Yeah.
wasn't very favorable. And I do question whether or not she would have performed well if there was a primary. And I think that that would be a whole nother conversation, right? Because why is somebody who's currently in the administration so unliked, or why are they viewed so unfavorably if they are trying to run for the next highest seat in the office? In the White House. So we could have these conversations all day.
Yeah. You're
But
right.
I think that those things, the fact that she's a black woman and the fact that she didn't go through a primary and I think she felt forced against a lot of people. And when we talk specifically about that huge centrist group, okay,
Yes.
when we talk about Liz Cheney, okay, you think her daddy would have voted for her?
No.
Let's just be
I
real.
mean,
Okay, okay.
he stomped for her, but that's just because they had that wing of the Republican Party had beef with Donald Trump. But yeah, no, I don't think in a normal scenario, Dick Cheney or Liz Cheney would support someone like Kamala Harris. That was a more personal issue they had with
No,
Trump.
so you duplicate that times a million all across the
Hmm.
country and everything
Hmm.
like that. Yeah, they're not really. Yeah,
No, no, you make a lot of good points. I mean, again, I think they, like you just said, there will be endless speculation as to what she could have done differently. What did she do wrong? What did she do right? She still got 75 million votes, which is a huge accomplishment.
yes.
And came pretty close. I mean, Donald Trump did not get 50% of the popular vote in that election. People need to remember that. Like, he got the most votes, he won the popular vote, but he did not crack 50%. So even in that election cycle, he still did not get, like what they call a plurality, like well over the 50% mark as far as like a mandate that really says, okay, the majority of people in this country support him. He just so happened to get lucky because there were a lot of people that voted in that election that didn't vote for either of them. And that
The
gave him
swing
the
states is
edge.
what really killed us, which is why, and
Yes.
because if I remember correctly, Virginia was one of those swing states, right?
Virginia did vote for Harris. Virginia did vote for Harris.
Okay.
But still,
Who? It was Wisconsin last year.
Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, all of those
Michigan.
swing
Okay.
states. Yeah, all of those states, which originally went for Biden in 2020, a lot of them went back to Trump in 2024.
In 2020, Joe Biden did secure 50% of the vote, if I remember correctly. I remember
Yes. Yes.
the election went on for, or the counting of the ballots went
Long
on for a few
time.
days.
Yeah. Because of
Yeah, but I
COVID. Yeah.
think eventually he surpassed 50%.
Sure. Yeah, I believe so.
Um, okay. That was
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
was
I
gonna
mean, that
say.
was over, and that was overwhelming. I mean, Biden got like 8 million more, 7, 8 million more votes than Trump. That was an overwhelming win. But yeah, Trump. I mean, yeah, he got 2 million more votes, a little over 2 million more votes than Kamala Harris. But it really, in the grand scheme of things, was not a huge win, just because there were so many people who voted for third party candidates and other people other than Harris and Trump, and that's the reason why that vote split was like that. But yeah, like you said, I do think it's unfair to try to compare Kamala Harris to some of these other women candidates that won this year. Because again, like you said, I mean, the fact that she's a black woman makes a huge difference. Because I mean, the one major black woman that was running in Virginia last night lost. And we talked about that on this show about how we didn't feel like conservative white men would come out to support her, even though she was a Republican nominee. And what
They
happened?
did not.
Happens to every black Republican I've ever seen other than Tim Scott. So I mean, we pretty much said that was going to happen.
And Tim Scott is not going to be able to get a higher office than the one he has now. So,
No, he's
um,
out. He's maxed out.
right. I just want to know because one of the things that I have to remind myself is that Trump has ran 3 times, right?
Yes, yes,
And I just need to understand the person who chose to vote for Trump in 2024 and now are saying, oh, you know what? Trump is not good for us. Let me vote Democrat. What was it? Because he's been lying for over a decade. He's been scamming y'all. And I just like what was it at this point? Because he's done all the bad. There's a gamut of things that we can say about Trump and why he should not be is the president of the United States. So I just need to understand from the people who have continued to vote for him and on yesterday decided to vote blue maybe for the first time. I just need to understand like what it was. I'm genuinely curious.
I mean, that's a great question, and I did a skit about this on TikTok about people who like that one guy who maybe voted for George W. Bush, but then was like, nah, that didn't work. Let me vote for Obama, and it was like, nah, that didn't work. Let me vote for Trump, and it was like, nah, that didn't work for Biden. Like, there are some people in this country that do not know what they want, and that constantly just think if I change it up, if the other party gets it, if I do something different, then that's going to change things. And usually, what it does is it just creates more friction, and now you don't have a consistent path and things just keep going back and forth and back and forth, and it's like, well, now we're just left with all these policies that get reversed every 4 years, and budgets that get completely upended and turned over every 4 years, and it's like there's no consistency to it. And so yeah, but I think to answer your question about like the person that may have voted for Trump in 2024 but then immediately said, because like we said, 6% it seems like Trump voters in Virginia said, you know what, I'm going to go blue this time. I think a lot of that has to do with how aggressive and extreme his approaches have been over the last 9 months. The things we see in Chicago and Portland, trying to dismantle the Department of Education, defunding, healthcare and scientific research, medical research, cancer research. I mean, these are just things that obviously, if people did what you did and read Project 2025, they could have seen all that coming. But he tried to distance himself from Project 2025, tried to say, oh, that's a liberal rumor. That's not really me. And it ended up being the playbook for everything he was going to do. And I think a lot of these people either thought, A, he wasn't going to do those things, or B, it was all about the economy. They really thought he's the businessman. The economy was kind of good when he was president the first time before the pandemic. So maybe if we get him back, he's going to lower the gas prices. He's going to lower the grocery prices, all this and such. And we all know that's a con, but that's what they were thinking. And I think once they got a refresher as to what America looks like under the chaotic leadership of Trump, they were like, you know what? Never mind. I flash back to 2020. I remember what this is like. Let me get away from it. It's just like, I just wish people's memories were better, because if you had just remembered what it was like in 2024, maybe we wouldn't be dealing with this shit right now.
Right. I think you brought up a point that I think that as a Black woman, I forget that there are people who genuinely like go back and forth, are in the
Yeah,
middle, and like you said, don't know, and I guess like become semi-educated every 4 years around who is who and what's what, and that's how they make the decisions instead of like truly keeping up with everything that's happening between each election.
sure.
And so, and even for those people, I would still say, well, do you not even notice a pattern between the people that are from each party that you may or may not be supporting? Do you not realize that, okay, when Obama was in office, eventually the economy became a little bit better. He had to do some work to undo the things that Bush did. And then
Sure.
eventually the economy became really great. And yes, Trump tried to claim that that was part of that the Obama economy was his, when really it wasn't. The
Yes.
sky fell out in 2020 due to COVID. And it's, essentially everybody, I think a lot of people feel as if the country has never recovered from
Yeah.
COVID, right? And part
Yeah.
of that, I believe, is because of the mishandling that Trump did. I mean, he had a whole year or almost a whole year of dealing with COVID where he completely mishandled it. And then you
Yes.
had Joe Biden who put things in place to try to recover it. But it, first of all, the government is always going to be beholden to corporations. And I wish people truly understood that. So there was only going to be so much that he really only did because corporate greed is a thing. And so we were always going to be feeling the brunt of whatever these corporations wanted to do, right? So the government can only have so much control as to what we are not or are not feeling in our pockets. So anyway, I just, I forget that a lot of people, I think things have become so politicized over the last 10, 15 years that I forget that there are people who like completely disengage until it's time to vote for president. Like they don't even vote in local
Yeah.
elections. So,
Yeah. Yeah. They don't vote in midterms. They don't vote for, the governors or the mayors unless it is during a general election. You're absolutely right. And I think that makes up the majority, unfortunately, of the voters in America, when they just wait till the presidency comes around and they vote mostly, I think, even more on like personality and stuff rather than like party and like policy and actually what's going on. So unfortunately, and those are the people that keep messing it all up for the rest of us. So it is what it is. We
exactly.
haven't we haven't talked much about California and Proposition 50, and basically they voted in favor, overwhelmingly in favor, to basically gerrymander
Gerrymander themselves.
their own state to give Democrats more seats to counter what Texas and some other red states are doing. And I think that is, to me, one of the clearest signs from Americans, particularly progressive Americans, that like, yo, this Trump shit, we've got to fight it. We've got to
Yeah.
put an end to it. And I think it actually, sadly, it took the radical nature of Trump to really come alive for people on the left to really wake up. I think a lot of people in 2024 was just thinking, this administration, this Biden thing wasn't that great, and Kamala's not going to be that different, and Trump wasn't that bad. COVID was what made it worse, and like people really forget, like his second term was always going to be worse because that's his real chance to show out. Because he ain't got to worry about another one. I mean, even though he keeps talking about maybe a third term, which is unconstitutional, but he really don't have to worry about another one, so he can just do whatever the hell he wants at that point to really cement the type of country that he's trying to leave behind. And I think people really didn't think about that in 2024, and they weren't prepared. And now that they see what this country really looks like, that shock and awe factor is there. And I think that's a good sign for Democrats going into 2026, the midterms and whatnot. But it really just depends. I mean, we have a whole year between now and then, and so it really, really depends. But the fact that people are willing to literally say, yeah, gerrymander my state, if it means fighting Trump, that's something that voters probably would not have done 5-10 years ago.
No,
and that's a huge
this is unheard of.
Unheard of, completely unheard of.
Yeah, this has never been done before, right?
No, not like that. No, not in the middle of a decade like this. No. It's usually something they do right after the census. This is very unprecedented. 100%.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I will say that all of this that has happened between, the election and even Democrats continuing to, hold a stand and not opening up the government. And then even with Prop 50 in California, it does give me a little bit of hope in my heart. Just a tinge. I'm not going to get excited. I'm going to keep living life with zero expectations. That's where I'm
at now. That's why you don't want to get excited and get your hopes let down. I'm with you there. So Cody,
one thing I will say, I'm sorry, I just wanted to say this because I did last year. I got excited.
Yeah,
I really didn't believe that Kamala Harris was going to win. I was skeptical. I want to be clear. I was very skeptical because I saw it happen to Hillary, and I was like, Hillary won Black. So I don't know what's about to happen with Kamala, but when I saw so many people, I mean, I think you remember the $1 million that was raised, like I think in 72 hours after she announced. I was just like, okay. And then there was some endorsements that came out like immediately. I was like, okay, so I think Kamala may have a shot here. And just put the bullet right in my heart. So
we're not getting burned on that deal again. So we're gonna wait and see what the next year brings us before we start counting our eggs or whatever before they hatch, whatever that saying is. But Cody, I got a question for you. I saw some concerning news about your alma mater, and when I saw it, I said, "Is this AI?" I said, "Is this like this?" But then, it was on AL.com, which is a pretty reputable source. You used to work for AL.com, so I was like, "No, this is a real story." What is going on with Tuskegee University? What? Just explain to me what's going on and who y'all gave an honorary degree to, and why? Because I know we don't know the real why, but why do you think this is happening? Just tell the people what's going on.
I know the why, but I want to know from you, what did you think when you first saw the news? Let's tell people what the news is.
Okay.
This past weekend, Tuskegee University celebrated 101 homecomings, and as a cap to the homecoming celebration, they always have convocation, and U.S. Senator Katie Britt, Republican here in Alabama, attended convocation, and the university gave her an honorary degree. I'm just going to stop there. Now, you tell me what your thoughts were when you saw the story.
Well, we've talked a little bit about Katie Britt on this show, and we've talked about you mentioned last week that she was at the
Magic City Classic.
She was at the Magic City Classic and taking pictures there and put it all on her social media, and that was already a bit unusual for a Republican to do. But I was like, you know what? She's trying to reach out to the community. No harm, no foul. I don't got any problems with that. But for an HBCU, especially one of that prestige, to give an honorary degree to what essentially is a MAGA Republican. I mean, Katie Britt my thing on Katie Britt is this: she comes off as a moderate. She comes off as a nice, lady who's a little bit more measured in her tone. She doesn't troll that much. She doesn't say really out there things like most Republicans do. So she comes off as, okay, this is somebody who's a little bit more dignified than the average Republican. But then every once in a while, she'll come out full blown MAGA. And she'll be, sitting there right next to Trump, giving him all his praise, all his credit, calling the Democrats a bunch of communists. Yeah, exactly. Getting on those knees, putting those knee pads on for Trump, and not calling out the things that she knows is wrong in the Trump administration, the corruption, the unlawful nature of it, the unconstitutional nature of it. She doesn't call those things out, and she actually allows those things to continue by running alongside them. And so why would a prestigious HBCU give an honorary degree to a MAGA Republican, let alone a white woman MAGA Republican? Like, what is going on in Tuskegee? You tell me.
Republican.
I mean, if it was a black MAGA Republican, maybe I could see it, because it's like, you still black. You came home. You came home. You know what I'm saying? You came home. You might be a little different. It's kind of like, like Colin Powell back in the day. Like, he wasn't MAGA or nothing, but Colin Powell was a Republican. And, some black folks respected him because it's like, you went high achievements. You had some high achievements, Condoleezza Rice, people like that. A lot of black folks didn't like them because they were Republicans, but it wasn't like we didn't hate them. We didn't like despise them the way we do some of these MAGA people. But you're going to give this degree to a white female MAGA Republican who is actively working against your interests on a daily basis? Like, make it make sense. I just don't understand what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, those are my exact sentiments. I mean, I 100% agree with you in terms of, I think that Katie Britt definitely presents herself as a moderate most of the time.
Yeah.
And then when it's time for her to do whatever it is that she needs to get done, she's going full blown MAGA. I truly believe that if Alabama was a blue state, that Katie Britt would be a Democrat. I don't think that she is true. I don't think that she's truly beholden to Republicanness, if I'm being honest with you. I think that she is a true politician. Let's be clear. Katie Britt went to the University of Alabama, where she was part of the machine. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. Okay. If you know, you know. She also is what I would call the politician daughter of Richard Shelby. She filled his shoes. Richard Shelby was not really well known for his talking points per se. He didn't really always have a lot to say. But he was very much a Republican, and he brought a lot of money back to Alabama. So I knew that when she was elected that she was going to do the same thing. And so let me just say this. HBCUs right now are having a moment. We're having a moment because of the things that Trump is doing to defund our institutions, and also because of race-based admissions that was reversed a couple of years ago. There's also been a resurgence in HBCU enrollment increasing over the last couple of years. Also, we've seen Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, Mackenzie Scott, give millions of dollars to a bunch of institutions. More recently, it's been sums up to $38 million. I believe it's been to Spelman, Howard, and I know there's been a couple other institutions that she's given money to. And this is not her first time giving out money. She did this, I want to say like around 2021, she also gave money. And Tuskegee was a recipient as well. I think at that point, Tuskegee received, I think, $1 million from Mackenzie Scott, if I'm recalling correctly. Well, Katie Britt has brought millions of dollars to Tuskegee as well. So last year, I believe she has brought in a little over $10 million to the aviation program. Also, I want to note that earlier this year, when there were rumors around how the Air Force Academy was going to restrict DEI courses from its program, there were talks that the Tuskegee Airmen was going to be one of the things that were stripped from its courses. And Katie Britt immediately jumped into the media and said, absolutely not. I'm going to make sure that Secretary Pete Hegseth is going to restore that, and it's not going anywhere. And from what I understand, the president and CEO of Tuskegee University, Dr. Mark Brown, who's only been in the job for not even a full 18 months. He's been in the job for a little less than that. So I just want to say, when Katie Britt gave some of that money, he was not even in seat yet. But my sources have told me that Dr. Brown and Katie Britt have some history. Like they worked together and have known each other for some time because he previously worked for the Department of Education in DC before taking this job. Okay. All that said, Tuskegee also has a history of being somewhat conservative. Tuskegee is a
Yeah.
private HBCU. If you understand and know the history of Booker T. Washington and some of the things that he instilled into the students, some of the first students at the institute, and then also Tuskegee has had relationships with conservatives over the history of the institution. We have multiple buildings on campus that are named after Republicans, or well, I won't say Republicans, but people who were considered conservatives. Additionally, we've had Ronald Reagan on campus, I believe, who's also had an honorary degree.
Wow.
There's a few people. So this is not the first time that Tuskegee has formed their relationships with certain politicians in order for the school to get money. A lot of those relationships is what has made Tuskegee Tuskegee. It is what has allowed Tuskegee is I think one of two universities in the entire country that's considered a national historic landmark. And so, we've had multiple presidents come to the campus. We've received millions and millions and millions of dollars in federal dollars because of the relationships that the university has had. So, with all that said, and understanding all of that history and context, it's not 100% surprising. It's disappointing for me personally as an alum, because I do feel like today, more than I would say in the last 60 years, we have more at risk right now than we have before. And regardless of how Katie Britt likes to play her politics, she supports anti-Black policy. She supported the Big Beautiful Bill, which is going to greatly disenfranchise Black and brown people all across the state of Alabama. She has done a lot of things to align herself so that she can stay in power. And that's what a lot of us need to always remember, is that a lot of these politicians are just doing what they have to do so they can remain in power for whatever their reasons are for why they want to remain in that power, right? And so I appreciate the fact that Katie Britt has given so much money and love to my alma mater. However, I do not think that giving her an honorary degree in this time was necessary or appropriate. I think that there was another way that we could have said thank you. I don't know what that would have been. I do think that Katie Britt maybe has given more money than maybe any other politician ever, maybe? I don't know. I need to fact check myself there. But she's given a ton of money to the university. I mean, I just mentioned the $10 million towards the aviation program, but she's given money towards other things that are part of the institution as well. I just think it was a misstep. Personally, I just think there's too much at risk right now. Our civil rights are literally being upended, and Black people are having a hard time finding jobs right now. The unemployment rate for Black people is very high. We know that Black people have proportionately are government workers. And so not only have a lot of them been affected by, Trump's anti-DEI policies when he first came into the White House in DC, and a lot of them were laid off earlier this year. But right now, through the government shutdown, a lot of Black people who have been able to keep their jobs are not getting money right now. And Katie, you supported all of that.
Yeah, 100%.
So I can't help but think that right now, I'm assuming she's going to run again. So she was elected in 2022, so she has another couple of years. So 2028, yeah. So I think she's now. I'm hypothesizing here. Like I don't know, but my assumption is that she's trying to cozy up to the Black and browns here and then so she can get reelected.
Yeah.
She don't really need our vote though. That's the thing.
That's what I'm saying. She don't really need it. So it's
I don't know. I don't know. I don't get it. That's why, like, to me, she's confusing, because it's like, you don't come across like a traditional. Richard Shelby was not giving money to Black people like that.
No.
Not from what I know. A lot of the money he was giving was to the UA system. So the University of Alabama, UAB, that's where he was giving his money to.
Sure.
again, I appreciate her giving money to my HBCU. But if you're gonna do like, can you be consistent? Can you do that and then also not like vote for my grandma to have to fight for her Medicaid?
So basically, Cody, what you're telling me is Katie bought that degree. That's essentially that's just I mean that's you don't have to say it, but that's what I'm here. I'm hearing she got a lot of money to this university, and they said, okay, well, we got a nice little thank you gift for you. I mean, that's what it kind of feels like to me, and that makes sense because I knew it was something money related. Like I knew when I
Of
saw it, the first thing I'm
course.
thinking, okay, it's something money related is
Of
going on here.
course.
But I,
But
you
the
know,
thing is, I'm sorry, the one thing I didn't mention, the thing that about this too for me is that like it's not like she's giving us her personal money. This is taxpayer money.
yeah, exactly,
You know what I'm saying?
exactly,
So it's
yeah.
like, okay, thanks for like redirecting funds back here. I appreciate that. But like it's
It's
taxpayer money.
It's interesting. One, I did not know that Tuskegee had such a conservative history. And now it makes sense when you say Booker T. Washington, because I do know Booker T. Washington was far more conservative than say somebody like W.B. Du Bois. So that makes sense when you lay it out like that. But I just for whatever reason, I didn't make that connection. So thank you for giving us that history there because that puts it all into perspective for me.
You
And
should
that
do a
makes
skit
this a
about
lot.
this.
I really should, because as you were saying it to me, I'm like, I didn't know all this. This is really interesting stuff. I liked learning about that. But yeah, it sounds like, but that's one of the things that I worry about too. Is like, is Katie Britt going to put conditions on some of this money to say, hey, now you got to teach certain courses, or you got to not teach certain courses that aren't necessarily in line with how we want education to be
I
structured.
don't think she can
You
legally do
know,
that.
well, no, I don't know. Of course, not legally, but like if it's one of those kind of things, like I'm gonna have a conversation with a dean, here or there, like what I'm saying, like off the record kind of thing. That's what I would worry about. But hey, I mean, if they're getting the money and those types of stipulations aren't on it, then I say more power to them. It's always good for an HBCU to be receiving more funding, so I'm not going to get upset with that. But like you said before, Katie Britt's an odd bird. I don't like you said. I personally believe that she's nowhere near as conservative as she comes off. I think she is a textbook politician that will say or do whatever it takes to get the people in her region to vote for her. And if that means I got to do some MAGA stuff here and there, I'm gonna do some MAGA stuff. But the fact that she's not as hardcore with it tells you where she really lies, and that kind of frustrates me because I feel like that makes her more dangerous than Tuberville. Because Tuberville, I know who he is. I
Right.
know what he is. I know
Right.
everything about him. I know what he's all about. But Katie Britt's gonna play both sides, and she's gonna be, mysterious. And I don't know if I can trust her or not. And I feel like that makes her even more dangerous, in my
Well, I
opinion.
don't feel like she's that mysterious. I mean, we know that she's going to support anything that Trump does. We know
Yeah,
that she's going to, I mean, she's going to do whatever she needs to do to
whatever the
align
right wants her
herself
to
with
do.
the
Yeah.
party. Yeah, absolutely. It's just that while she's doing that, she's also like, okay, now I'm gonna hang out with the blacks. You know?
that's what I kind of got from the all these photo ops she's been doing lately.
Yeah.
But I mean, I also think she has her eyes on higher office, though. I think she thinks she could be president one day. I really do. I think she thinks. Now I don't know about in this particular era of the Republican Party, but I mean she's young, so I think she's eyeing something maybe 10 years down the road where she feels like she could do something at a bigger level, or maybe even be governor of Alabama herself or something like that. So I think she's setting herself up for future endeavors, and you know, I said we'll see where that goes. But I appreciate you giving us more clarity on all of that. And Cody, I do want to tell everybody who's listening to this podcast, because I think Cody has claimed that I haven't been doing this. So let me just say that if you are listening to this podcast and you like what you hear, please remember to subscribe to the YouTube page that you heard this on. Make sure to rate the podcast on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to it on, and tell your friends about the podcast. Let everybody know that, hey, there's this new podcast for progressives who live in red states, and it's called Living in the Red, and you should go check it out. So we appreciate
Yes.
everybody for listening to the show this week, and we will see you guys next time.